For how many times have you heard your network is your net worth? What does that really mean, and how does it actually really lead to net worth? We're going to talk about that right now. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you. You've worked so hard for your money, and you're now ready for that money to start working harder for you today. You want that freedom of cash flow, not 30 or 40 years from now, but you want it today so you can live that life that you love with those that you love. But most importantly, guys, you're not just here to get rich, but you're here to live a rich life, because as you're blessed financially, as you have greater capacity and resources and means, you now have a greater capacity to bless the lives and create a ripple effect to the lives of others. That is exactly what I'm here to do for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you guys that have been binging and sharing these episodes with others. Man, it's been awesome. By the way, if you like this episode, please go ahead and hit the like button, of course. And if you love it, share it with somebody else. Love have you share our episodes, of course, and be able to spread that ripple effect so we can bless more lives. All right, guys, so I'm bringing on Bill Barnett today. Now, if you don't know Bill, you've probably known a lot of the things he has worked on. If you guys have ever been involved in the radio world, if you ever dealt with things like Radio Disney, he actually did Radio Oz. Before that he had that it became the precursor, the predecessor to things like Radio Disney and many others, going from one station to syndicated nationally. He's also worked in many different ways in helping entrepreneurs and startups be able to get them the education they need to get them to grow. And he's just continued on and on with the mission that he's had to help more people, even veterans as well. Been a huge blessing in so many people's lives. Master story, I'm going to let him tell you as well, but I'll tell you, I'm so honored to have Bill on our show today. So Bill, welcome.
Chris, it's good to be with you. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Same here. So give us some background, like what got you started in this business, really the business you're in. I know you've had kind of this sequential, like then, it's almost like it's not, sometimes it doesn't seem like they're correlated at times.
Right. Well, I got to tell you a funny story, and it relates to my entire career. It all started on a train from Chicago to South Bend, Indiana. I was a yell leader at USC. And so I traveled to all the USC football games, and I'm on a train, and I'm talking to this lovely woman sitting right across from me. And I'm 20, and she's probably in her 40s. And we start chatting, and she says, you know what? I am having a great conversation with you, but I want you to meet my husband. And her husband was 2 cars up talking to a client. He comes back and starts talking to me. We talked for about a half an hour. And I said, by the way, what do you do? He says, well, I'm the president of Leo Burnett, which was the largest ad agency in the country at the time. Wow. And he says, Bill, he says, I know you told me you're studying business. I want you to switch your major. I want you to go to marketing. I want you to switch to the Annenberg School of Communications, because I have not met a lot of 21-year-olds or 20-year-olds, whatever I was at the time, that are as articulate and enjoy talking as much as you do. And he says, that's your gift. Your gift is conversation. Your gift is being able to talk to other people. Long story short, I switched my major. I graduated the following year, and I got a job at a company called Foot Cone Building, a contemporary of Leo Burnett in Los Angeles. And that's how my career started. I started as an assistant buyer. If you would have asked me a year earlier, what was an assistant buyer, I could not have told you to save my life.
Yeah.
But I learned all about radio and all about television. I was doing that job for about 9 months. I got recruited to work for a big radio rep firm called Eastman Radio. And that's how my career took off. I got into radio. I started my own radio production company. That led into me being president of Radio Oz, which, as you alluded to, we eventually sold to Radio Disney, and it became the largest kids radio network in the world.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's so true. I want to kind of go back to that train ride. I mean, to make that kind of jump, I mean, what was it that gave you the faith to say, you know what, I'm switching paths? Even though it wasn't a big switch, still, it was a significant switch there. What was it that really inspired you to do so?
I don't think I had a real career path designed other than knowing I wanted to get into business, which eventually I did, obviously. But here is a guy that was president of Leo Burnett, the largest ad agency in the world. And he's giving me guidance. I'm saying, who am I to say that I know better about my career than he does? He's an evaluator of talent. He's run this big company. I said, I'm going to go with it. Let's see where it takes me. So a little bit of a leap of faith. And that was the beginning of my trusting my network. I always say it's very important to have, which we'll talk about, building a personal board of directors. I guess you could say, other than my father, he was the first person on a personal board of directors.
I love that. Well, I mean, and this may or may not leave the conversation, but I'm just curious, now that you're in your 40s plus, at this point, right? Just like we all are now, but what would you give it as advice to a 20-year-old today in today's world? I don't know, obviously you don't know that individual, but if there was some, maybe a kind of good starting advice for some 20-year-old right now, what would you say?
I would say the best thing you can do is start thinking about tomorrow. A
Mm.
lot of 20-year-olds are only thinking about today. That comes with everything. What am I happy about today or tomorrow, or where am I going this weekend? I want all 20-year-olds to start thinking about tomorrow. If
Mm.
they start planning for tomorrow, they will make better decisions, not just financially. We'll talk about that. But I'm
Yeah.
talking about as far as your network, as far as the relationships that you have. What can I do today that's going to have a good effect? I always tell new parents, so I talk to a lot of new parents, every decision you make today is not just about you. It's about what your kids are going to think about you in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years. Make the right decisions, not just for the people around you, but for your career as well. Start thinking about tomorrow, today.
I love that. Great advice. Well, now tell me, like you've obviously pivoted out of radio. What was your next step? What was the next move you did?
So my radio career, after I was working after I had my own radio production company, I worked for a company it was at the time MCA Records. It's now NBC Universal.
Oh yeah.
And I sold my company to them. What happened was, after I had left that company, did a couple of small things in between, I get a call from somebody, this leads into the Radio Oz, that had seen me on one of my a presentation that I had made. He'd seen a tape of it. And he says, Bill, I have an idea. I have one single radio station in Minneapolis. I'd like to turn it into a network, and eventually I'd like to see where it goes. So he flew me out there. That led to me becoming the president of the company, and did it for 3 years, put a deal together with Disney, some relationships I had over there. They invested in our company. They bought 20% of the time on our network. And there were some ups and downs. Disney is not always the easiest company to work with, but we worked out a deal. We had a couple of back and forths. Eventually, I'll skip all the meat and potatoes of it because it's a long story, but eventually it became Radio Disney. And then after that, I had a film production company. We did several big movies. I did Jessica Alba's first movie. It was called Punks. That was a fun thing. But eventually, my next big company, and we'll get into the network because I had a couple of other big investment occurrences that happened, which had nothing to do with me other than my relationships. But I started a company called Likability, and that was out of need. My kids were going off to college. And I said, guys, you're good students, not great students, but good students, strong B, 3.5 students. I said, well, I think you should interview. I think you should go to colleges to interview because I think that's going to be really helpful. I cannot tell you how difficult it is for kids to interview at colleges. Either the colleges don't have the manpower, kids can't afford to go to the colleges, that they can't afford to fly there. Anyway, one problem after another. I decided to start a company called Like Live, which is a platform for kids all over the world that either logistically couldn't get to the school to interview or couldn't afford to fly to the school, to upload an interview answering questions of the university, and it would attach to all their files.
Wow.
Built that up. I sold it to a company called ETS, which you may not know, but you know. They do the SAT, the GRE, the TOEFL, the TOEIC.
Yep.
Eventually, after we built it up, after a couple of years, I sold it to them. And so that was another relatively good exit that I had as well. And that was something out of need. I didn't plan on saying, wow, kids need a place to interview. It just happened because of my personal occurrences with my kids. So that's what happened. Sold it to them. And then I started to get into helping veterans with career opportunities. I became chairman of the board of something called the Rosie Network, which helps veterans that are transitioning that are starting their own businesses. But what was interesting about that is that 80% of the people we helped were women. It was the men that were in service, they were in the service, but the women were supporting their families and needed a source of income.
Yeah.
And because the husbands in general, 20% were women were serving, but 80% of the women were starting their own businesses. They needed something that they could do that was virtual because
Yes.
they were traveling a lot. And so we came up and helped them with businesses. I helped them with financing. I helped them with contacts. I helped them with networking. I helped them with business plans. And eventually that took off as well. So I've had a lot of experience helping young entrepreneurs start their own businesses. But it all starts with their network, with the people that they're surrounding themselves with. That's the key to a successful, not just career, but a successful life.
Well, that's really the common theme, the thread that you have in your life, isn't it? Is that the network is your net worth.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, I would be nowhere without my network, without my friends, without my business associates. And the key to developing a good network is very simple. Become likable. Become somebody that other people want to work with, that other people want to help, and that trust you. Trust them, and they trust you. That's kind of the key to it, is the trust factor.
If you've been following this podcast, you're probably looking for great ways to create passive income right now, right? Well, we got you covered here with Central Lending. Central Lending specializes in alternative investments that actually are designed to create steady returns and long-term financial security for you and your family. Now, they prioritize transparency. They love, building those strong relationships, giving you that confidence and peace of mind, knowing that you have your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to learn more how to do that? Go to centrallending.com and check out what they've got today to create your passive income and wealth creation right now. Right. That's big.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the How to Win Friends and Influence People. I remember that was my first personal development book I read when I went into business as an entrepreneur, right?
Exactly right. Just remember that one thing. Become likable. If you become likable, your entire world opens up.
Even if you're an introvert, is it possible?
100%. I get that question all the time. I'm glad you asked that. I get that question all the time. It may be a little bit of a force that you have to fight when you're younger, but once you learn how to navigate those waters and you become somebody that other people want to talk to, it's so easy to have conversation. And there's books, there's so many things to talk about, easy ways to open conversation. And one of the easiest things that I have found is that, you know what people enjoy talking about more than anything? Themselves. Talk to other people about them. What do you do? Where do you live? Where are you from? That door opens up. As an introvert, if you can just focus on the other person, it will open up to talking about you. But talk about what people love talking about the most, and that's them.
So true. I was actually at a lunch this last week with a guy, and it wasn't like I was intentionally doing it, but what I noticed is that my food was gone way before his. And for that reason, I knew I did a good job, because at least that meant I was asking him questions, he was answering, he was talking while I was doing the eating. Plus, I was really hungry. So that was part of it too. But it does
It's absolutely true, though.
that helps ask those questions, doesn't it?
You're 100% right about that. I mean, I got to tell you, I'm always the first one eating because I always love hearing about other people. The way I look at it is I already know everything about myself. I'm not learning. I'm not learning anything if I'm talking about myself. I want to learn. If I go to a lunch, if I go out to a movie with if we go to a movie, I'm not learning if I'm talking about myself. I'm only learning if I'm finding out more about the other person. If you have, at the end of the evening, if you've learned more about them than they have about you, you've won. You've won the evening.
I totally agree with that. That's so true. What would you say to somebody who's, kind of like I was telling you off the air before we started is, you hear your network is your net worth, right? And you hear that by so many people in the business world, especially all the time. And and someone might say, well, that's a nice platitude, but so what? Like, how would you respond to that?
Yeah. If somebody says so what to that, then they're missing out on not only success, but they're missing out on life. My entire life has been put in a position of where I am now because of my friends. And a lot of these people that were in my network, my professional network, are now part of my personal life, part of my personal network. And I always try to, I'm not one for small talk. I'm not one that I get to the meat of matters. I really am interested when I'm talking about other people. I really am interested in what they do.
Hmm.
In my book, I talk about this. I had three really good exits within a 3-year period of time. One of them was my Like Live business. Another one was a business that I knew zero about. It was just a good friend that I knew was very smart and always been very successful. It was a motor vehicle company. And he talked about a new licensing, a new way to get license plates and a new efficiency program. I said, listen, Kelly, I am not going to read that business plan. How much do you want? And I wrote him a check. And nothing happened for 3 years. And after the fourth year, because I think it was the 2008 downturn, we had there was a bit of a recession at that period of time, if you remember. And after the third year, I start getting checks. And they ultimately turned out to be for 100% of my investment for 4 years in a row. And then
Wow.
a company called KKR, a big investment company, came in and said, we'd like to buy your company. And we had a very big return on that. I knew, again, by the end of the time, I still knew nothing about what their company, I mean, I knew a little bit because I heard a few board meetings. I knew a little bit, but not much. And we had an extremely successful exit from that, all because Kelly was my good friend. And he was my good friend because all of our kids went to grammar school together and we became close. Another exit that I had, all within that same period of time, is my dad told me when I was young, he said, Bill, I want you to start investing in this real estate syndication company that I'm in. And he says, just give me whatever you can and we'll do shares together. That lasted for about 45 years. I got a check for 1% of my investment and sometimes it was 2 and 3%, but generally 1% of my investment every month for 40 years. And
Wow.
one day he says, Bill, I'm retiring. He sold all the buildings. We had a very successful exit, not because I knew anything about real estate, not because I knew anything about the DMV or licensing, but because I trusted these people that were in my network. And if you learn to trust them, I always say, pick who you trust and then trust who you pick. If
Mm.
they tell you something and you trust them as a person that cares about cares about your interest, then trust them. I trusted these people, and those were bigger exits than I had on my own company. So that's what a network is all about. That's why your network is your net worth.
I love that. Have you ever had your network help you in a hard situation too?
I have never not had my network help me in a hard situation. I'm one of these people that even when I feel like I have more expertise than some of my network in a certain area, I still go to them and get their opinion. I talk about this also in my book. There's nothing that I do, nothing, not one thing that I do of consequence that I don't consult at least 3 or 4 other people. What do you think about this? Am I looking at it the right way? And even if they're not in my business, or even if they're not in the business that I'm going into, they'll be able to give me some tidbit of information, some hint, some good tip that says, you know what, I'm going to look at this a little different way. Or what they may do is, Bill, I'm not the right person, but I have somebody else on my board of directors that's an expert in this, and I think you should talk to them. So I would tell you there's almost nothing I do that I don't consult my board of directors.
I love that. Well, what I get out of this is part of that being likable too, is that you're also open and teachable, right? That you are always learning. You're humble.
You have to be. You will
Yeah.
not succeed if you're not. If you go into every room thinking you're the smartest person in the room, people will not want to talk to you. People
Mhm.
will not want to associate with you. And most importantly, people will not want to do business with you. So if you go in with humility, telling other people how good you feel, complimenting them on how good they are, they'll be much more open to you. The other little piece I want to throw into this is that it's extremely important when you go to Vegas to gamble. You can't just sit down at a table and gamble. You need to have money to gamble with, right?
Mhm.
Well, when you are forming relationships, you can't just be in there wanting to take advantage or learn from other people. There's got to be something that you bring to the table. So I always say, become as good as you can. You don't have to be the best, but as good as you can at whatever your vertical is, whatever your area of expertise is, because you need to bring something to the table that I have people that call me all the time, Bill, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because I have a certain area of expertise. So I need to bring something to the table. Bring the best, whatever you're the best at, bring that to the table. That's your bargaining chip. That's your cash to gamble with. So once you bring something to the table, then other people say, okay, Bill, he's a reciprocal board of directors. He brings this to my table. So that's what I would advise, becoming the best you can at whatever it is you do.
Great advice. Love it, Bill. Well, before I get to the last final question for you, if people want to follow you, they want to be able to be a part of your world, what's the best way they can do that?
Everything is on my website, smartermindsnetwork.com. Thank you for asking. Smartermindsnetwork.com. Everything is on there. I've got a blog, a new one that goes out every week. You go to my blogs. I have a book that people can read, Smarter Minds, Recruit and Leverage Others for Sustainable Success. It's all about making sure that if you do anything, have relationships. Make sure that I've got the right relationships that when I have people call me, and if I can't help them directly, I'm never more than one phone call away from finding the right person. Mm. And I think everybody should be in that position. Build your board of directors. Anyway, my smartermindsnetwork.com website, everything is on there, and you can get all the information you need.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely put that in the show notes, smartermindsnetwork.com. And yeah, I mean, if anybody, I'm sure, has already gotten great value, they're going to want to get more from you, of course. So, well, final question for you, Bill. And this is kind of like, it could be a bigger question. I know it's tying in with what you're doing already, probably to some degree, but obviously this is the Money Ripples podcast. And you heard me in the intro talking about the ripple effect you create in people's lives. So, Bill, what do you feel is your ripple effect that you're here to do on this planet?
Yeah, I think what I do is when I'm doing something for somebody else, I never think, how's it going to come back to help me? I just think that there's a bigger universe out there. And if something good is going to happen, it's going to happen. But if you think about the other person first, doing something for the other person, it's like when you have a dog. They never think about, oh, what am I going to get out of this? They just give you love. They just give you and I try to be that with other people. When they are calling me, especially good friends or people that I know, when they're calling me for advice, I don't think about, well, what can they do for me? I just think about, what is it that I can do to pay it forward? Because so many people have helped me in my life. I'm thinking, okay, this is my way of paying it forward. If I can help somebody do something and help them in their life or in their personal life, business life, it doesn't matter. If I can pay it forward now, and I'm telling you, it comes back 100-fold to help you. It's not what they're going to do for you, what you can do for them. It will come back to help you. Think about the other person first.
So true. So true. I was going to say, sum that up, be a dog, but that doesn't sound right. But but you don't want to say be a service dog either, because that doesn't sound good either. But
no, that doesn't sound good either. But you know how you get that unrestricted love. Forgot the word I'm looking for, but you're not expecting anything.
No strings attached.
Exactly. Right? No strings attached. If you want to help somebody, you can help somebody, do it. It'll come back to help you.
I love that. Bill, pretty much in one interview, you've just about covered all of our core values in one interview. I love it. So, no, this is great stuff. Really appreciate you being on today.
Chris, it was my pleasure. It was good talking with you.
So everybody else, again, be sure to follow Bill. Like we said, we'll put his link in the show notes, especially if you're driving. We don't want you wrecking at this point. So definitely be sure to check out Bill's stuff. Go deeper. And remember, it's all about, one, learning how you can actually be someone who's actually, people become likable. But two, remember that network is your net worth. And the best way to do that, again, is always show up humble, willing to serve. And of course, being that person that's also smart at what you do, but always trusting in others too. So anyways, Bill, thank you again so much for today. And the rest of you, go and make it a wonderful and prosperous week. And we'll see you later.